the Philistines unto the border of Egypt. So the land promise was fulfilled during the days of Joshua, of the land proper. But the extended land promise of chapter 15 of Genesis that went to Abraham, that is, the promise went to Abraham, that his descendants would have this land that went from the river to all the way, or from the Euphrates all the way to the river of Egypt. That was realized during the days of Solomon. They did not inhabit all that land, but they subjugated it. And that shows the extent of Solomon's empire. In the 5th chapter, he has a league with Hiram of Tyre to build something. What is the thing that he's going to build? The temple. That's right. And then in chapter 6, the temple is built. Verse 7 is significant, I think. The house, when it was in building, was built of stone made ready at the quarry. And neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building. The instructions, the blueprint for the temple was so extensive and so precise that when they quarried the rock there was neither hammer nor axe heard in the house as it was being built. Everything was perfect. But the 6th chapter deals with the building of the temple. Then in the 7th chapter, whose house is built? Solomon. And then in chapter 8, we have Solomon's wife. I'm sorry, what was that, Patty? Bring the Ark of the Covenant. And then we have his valedictorial prayer in that chapter. And then let's see, we go on back through, we have another couple of chapters. 8 and 9. In chapter 9, God makes a covenant with Solomon. And basically he says, if verse 3, I have heard your prayer and your supplication. And verse 4, as for thee, if you walk before me as David your father walked. Verse 5, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom forever. However, verse 6, but if ye shall turn away from following me, verse 7, then will I cut off Israel out of the land, and so on. What was the history? What was the subsequent history? Did he do that? Was it the but? But yes, and we see that. All right, so some cities were given to Hiram for the work that he had done and the offers that he had made. And then in 10, we have the visit of someone, Queen of Sheba. And Jesus mentions her in the 11th chapter of Matthew, which we've already studied. All right, comment or question on any of that? All right, let's move to our study of the life of Christ now. And I want us to think real briefly about where we've been. Jonathan, I don't know if you heard me earlier, chart 5. I just had go back to a map of Palestine, or Israel. And we want to remember that Jesus' parents, Mary and then the adopted father Jesus, are living up in Nazareth. That's the home. And then they come down to Bethlehem because of an edict from Caesar Augustus that the whole world would be enrolled in tax. A census would be taken. So they come down to Bethlehem, which was the city of David's family, and there Jesus is born. We're skipping Luke 1, the birth of John, and then Jesus is born in Luke 2, and then the genealogies of Jesus in Luke 3. Jesus is baptized somewhere around here, Bethany beyond the Jordan. Immediately goes into the wilderness of Judea where he is tempted. And then we come back over into the area of Judea around Jerusalem, and we have the events of John, the 1st chapter. And then John 2, the quick trip to Canaan, turns water to wine. Capernaum, back to Jerusalem, where he cleanses the temple. Chapter 3, the interview with Nicodemus. Chapter 4, he begins to go north because John the Baptist, who had been preaching up in Enon near to Salem, which is about where the red dot is, had been in prison down here in Macris. That's not in the Bible, that part isn't, but that's recorded by others. And so Jesus goes up through Samaria, the woman at the well we remember. then Cana, Nazareth, and makes Capernaum his home. So here's where we've been. In the Great Galilean Ministry, we've had a number of events that occurred. We remember his calling Peter, Andrew, James, and John. You follow me and I'll make you what? Fishers of men. A number of miracles. Finally, he selects the 12 from among the multitudes. And then we have, that's in Luke 6, and we have the Sermon on the Mount right here outside Capernaum. And then after that, the stories that we've been reading about in Matthew and Luke. The centurion's servant is healed, who was near death. The widow's son at Nain was raised from the dead. Jesus' estimate of John, the woes of the cities of Galilee, and then he attends a feast by Simon the Pharisee when a sinful woman anoints him. And then in Luke the 8th chapter, the first 3 verses, the second tour of Galilee, he's going through there. And then we have that busy day in Jesus' life that we're talking about. He was accused of casting out demons by Beelzebub. Some were saying, could this be the son of David? And the Pharisees said, no way. And then they asked for a sign. No sign will be given except the sign of Jonah the prophet. And then his mother and brothers desired to see him. And Jesus said, I'll tell you who my mother and my brothers are, those who do the will of God. And then the parables that we just finished talking about Wednesday night. We finished them off Wednesday night. Name them real quickly. Parable of the sower, the seed growing of itself. Help me out. The obstacles. Parable of the tares. Then how it starts small. Mustard seed. By contact. Leaven. Value.
Hidden treasure.
Hidden treasure. Value again. Pearl of great price. Picture of judgment. Parable of the what? Fish net. And then the last one, if you consider it a parable, a scribe is like a scribe who's become a disciple is like a householder. All right. And so that's where we've been. And now, best I can tell, and I'll explain in just a moment. Jesus explains the cost of discipleship. A scribe comes up and says, Lord, I'll follow you whithersoever you go. And Jesus responded, you can all quote this, the foxes have holes, the birds of the heavens have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. And another disciple said, Lord, I'll follow you, but first let me go bury my dead. And he said, follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead. I think that happened here. And then they push out from shore and go across the sea. And then when they go across the sea to the area of the Gadarenes or the Gerasa, then he cast out the Gerasene demoniacs. So that's where we are right now. Here we are. He explains the cost of discipleship and then begins to cross the sea. Now, I want you to notice something. Here we go. If you would, look on page 55 of the Waldron material, page 55. That's where on the right-hand column of the left page, Jesus stills the storm at sea. Now you'll notice they have Matthew 8 verse 18. You see that? Is everybody looking at the same? Are we all on the same page? Matthew 8:18. Then they skip down to 23 through 27, which is the calming of the sea. And the Waldrons do not include this little section where two come to Jesus and propose to follow him wherever he goes. If you'll notice way on over, and I don't know what the page number, I have not numbered, but it's on in. We're past the Great Galilean work to the period of retirement. And it's right before the close of Jesus' ministry, right before that page. If you find the close of Jesus' ministry, go backwards until you get to the last page. And you'll notice there on whatever page that is, on the left page, left column, Christ's followers must give up everything to follow him. And that's where the Waldrons include Matthew 8, 19 through 22. Have you found it? Everybody's found it? You haven't? Some of you haven't. If you just go, this is the last, up here on the top, the period of retirement. And then you'll notice the next page, the close of Jesus' ministry. So you see the close of Jesus' ministry, a page before that period, and then on the left-hand side is where they put this. And so they put it at the end of the period of retirement. And there's a question on the chronology here.
It's page 79.
Page 79, okay. I haven't numbered it that far in my mind. So they don't do it there. And if you'll notice in mine, I do. I put it there. And in doing some studying on that, I'm going to include this note that I don't have in the workbook. Some writers place this event with Luke 9. Well, let's just go ahead and read it. Let's turn. If you're in Matthew 8, then hold your finger there and go to Luke 9. Luke 9. There's some similarities to this event with what we read in Matthew 8. There are some differences, though. Read with me, verse 57, Luke 9:57. As they went on the way, a certain man said unto him, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. And Jesus said unto him, the foxes have holes, the birds of the heaven have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. And he said unto another, follow me. And he said, Lord, suffer me first to go and bury my father. But he said unto him, leave the dead to bury their own dead, but go thou and publish abroad the kingdom of God. And another also said, so you have three according to Luke, I will follow thee, Lord, but first suffer me to bid farewell to them that are at my house. Jesus said unto him, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. So I want you to notice, if you go backwards just a little bit, in Luke 9, verse 51, it came to pass when the days were well nigh come that he should be received up, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem, and sent messengers before his face, and they went and entered into a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. In verse 57, and as they went on the way, a certain man said unto him. So it looks like, from Luke's account, that this is an event that happened late, and it happened when he's in Samaria, or at least on his way to Samaria. But if you go back to Matthew's account, let's go back to Matthew 8 now. This seems to be right after the occasion of the preaching in parables, that is in Mark and Luke, after the preaching in parables. And you'll notice in verse 18, Matthew 8:18, when Jesus saw great multitudes about him, he gave commandment to depart into the other side. And then verse 23, and when he was entered into the boat, his disciples followed him. Contextually, it looks like to me that, Jesus has been in the boat giving these parables, but he's very close to shore. And it looks like as he's close, someone wants to join him. And then he answers this. Well, two men want to join him. And he answers them here in Matthew 8 in the order Matthew has it. And then when they evidently didn't follow, then they start to cross the sea. And that's when Jesus falls asleep and the storm brews and he calms it. That seems to be, to me, the best of the explanation of the chronology. And so I put this together. Some writers place this event with Luke 9:57 through 62. A.T. Robertson, that some of you have, his chronology of the life of Christ. Brother and Sister Waldron, some others that I've read. While others place it at this time just before he crosses the sea. J.W. McGarvey, John Kerr, and others. Matthew's account makes it appear that it occurred now, just before entering the boat. A scribe hearing the parables might be more inclined to follow at this time, which would fit the chronology. However, the details are similar to the event in Luke 9, and Jesus' answers are similar. Yet Luke records 3 men who requested to follow Jesus, whereas Matthew records 2. Luke's account, though, places Jesus in Samaria, and later, several months, in fact, in his ministry, perhaps a year later, and when he's on his way to Jerusalem. And that's why we place this event here. It seems to fit the chronology better. I remember Brother Walter and I talked a little about some of these events that are And his answer was, it's just hard to tell. And I agree completely, it's hard to tell. But I'm putting it here. The main point that we have is that Jesus is placing some pretty strict conditions on following him. He takes precedence over even, here's the death of a family member, a father. And Jesus is not against, burying your parents. But if you're going to follow me right now, then I don't have time to wait. If a person among the Jews had been involved in the burial, it would have made them ceremonially what? Unclean for 7 days. And so Jesus doesn't, hey, if you're going to follow me, you're going to have to let the dead bury their own dead. Play on words, let the spiritual dead bury the physical dead, people who are not following me. And this scribe who follows him, I'll go wherever. And then Jesus says, look, right now, I'm not carrying any provisions. Foxes have holes. Birds, they lodge in nests. But right now I'm going from pillar to post. I'm just trying to evangelize people. And so you need to know what it takes to follow me. And so it looks like to me that this is where it fits, but the lessons are the same. It doesn't matter where you find it in the life of Christ. The lessons are the same. Let's read Matthew's account. And I put this all together, as you could tell, 18 through 27. Angela, if you would, read that for us. Matthew 8, 18 through 27. Matthew 8, 18 through 27. All right, let's turn over to Mark's account. Mark, the 4th chapter, please. Mark 4, and it's at the very end of the chapter. Mark does not include the men who proposed that they would follow Jesus. Read this, Sister Eleanor, if you would, 35 through 41. Mark 4, 35 through 41.
And the same day, when the even was come, he saith unto them, let us pass over into the other side.
All right, let me interrupt you. That verse is the verse we know that this happened on what? The same day as these other events. Okay, go ahead, Sister Helen.
And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship. And there were also with him other little ships.
All right, let me stop you again. Does your translation have a comma after even as he was? Has a period. Okay. If you're not careful, I think that is a key. They take him with him even as he was, comma, in the boat. Even as he was. In other words, he didn't carry any what with himself? What was that fair? Provisions. No provisions. He was just going, it was like, here you got your clothes on, you don't have anything else, no keys, no wallet. Let's go on the other. So just as he was, he goes over. No plans to stay anywhere for long. Okay, keep going now, 37.
And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him, and said unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. and the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?
All right, thank you. There's one other point I want to make in this. In verse 36, the last phrase of 36 is not mentioned in the other accounts. What is it? Other boats were with them, which indicates that this was witnessed by a number of witnesses. This was seen by a number of witnesses. All right, let's go to the account in Luke. Luke 8, 22 through 25. Luke 8, 22 through 25. And Sister Billy, if you would read that for us. Luke 8, 22 through 25.
Now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship with his disciples, and he said unto them, Let us go over unto the other side of the lake. And they launched forth. But as they sailed, he fell asleep, and there came down a storm of wind on the lake, and they were filled with water and were in jeopardy. And they came to him and awoke him, saying, Master, Master, we perish. Then he arose and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said unto them, Where is your faith? And they, being afraid, wondered, saying one to another, What manner of man is this? For he commanded even the winds and water, and they obeyed him.
All right. I wanted to show just a few more pictures, and we've seen some of these before, but I wanted to get our, this is looking, let me back up just for a second. Here we go. The following pictures are looking from the east. Where I took these pictures, I was over here toward this area where the next event occurs, where the swine, the 2,000 swine went down into the sea after Jesus had cast the demons out of the two men. So if you can picture yourself being right here, and then you look up to your left, and you'll see this very high mountain. These holes are caves, and you'll see that, which answers to the tombs in which the two men of the Gadarenes would dwell. There's another picture. Then looking back around, you just see how steep it is. And this area here answers just a little later to what we'll see the swine going headlong down into the sea, where there's no position there's no place for you to put on the brake, so to speak. You're just going to go right on in. It's just kind of straight.
Is that the sea or is that the sky? I can't tell.
No, that's the Sea of Galilee all in here. Back up. Well, I give you a different picture. You see the little ripples in the waves there. And here's a picture. I zoomed back out, and I'm looking toward the south. That would be the south. That would be the west. We're on the east side. And then when you look over here, we're looking kind of in a northwestern direction. And Capernaum would be right over in that area. And then Bethsaida would be over Capernaum, Chorazin, and Bethsaida. Capernaum, Chorazin, and Bethsaida in that area. And so what happens now, Jesus is over in this area, and it's actually a lot farther than it looks. It's about 4 miles, 5 miles to go, and 7 miles across here, but about 5 miles to go across from here to where they are. So it would be easy for, and the bowl structure, the bowl type of topography that surrounded the Sea of Galilee was such that squalls could easily come. Storms would brew quickly while you were out on the middle. And that's exactly what we have. And so right over here, somewhere around Capernaum, Jesus says, let's go across. And he's been misunderstood, insulted by the Pharisees. He's out, dealt with them. He's been in a house. In the afternoon, he's taught just right outside there in the sea, taught all these parables. And so it's going on a little bit into the afternoon. And so you can just imagine what's going on with Jesus. So these men ask him if they can go along with him, and he answers them. Let's answer some of our questions here. A, on page 71, we know that this event happened the same day Jesus taught in parables, because Mark's account says, and what? On that day, the same day. Jesus wanted to cross from Capernaum to the other side of the Sea of Galilee when he saw what? Multitudes. He was evidently tired from the strenuous day. Notice that between the time Jesus announced his intention to cross the sea and his departure, he has an interview with two disciples. It's likely these two wanted to go with him as guests. A scribe told Jesus that he would follow him where? Wherever he went. What did Jesus tell him? Foxes have holes, birds of the heavens have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. The Son of Man was Jesus' usual designation of himself. It corresponded to what Daniel had predicted he would be. He saw the Son of Man going through the clouds and ascending to the Ancient of Days in 7:13-14. I mentioned in the note it's possible that this scribe had listened to the parables and wanted to follow Jesus as a guest. From verse 21, we learn that this man was a disciple, because it says another disciple. Jesus tells the scribe that to follow him now meant that he would not have any certain place to live. Jesus seems to be without a home, and that he was dependent on the hospitality of the people for food and lodging. Another disciple came to Jesus and desired to follow him, but first wanted to do what? Go bury his father. Jesus said, follow me. Imperative. Right now, you got to follow me. And let the what? Dead bury their own dead. Yes. Play on the word dead. The man to be buried was obviously physically dead or dying, and those Jesus insisted should bury him were those who were spiritually dead. Two other considerations. First, it's likely that this disciple was one of the apostles who earlier had been called to leave all and follow Jesus. If this is the case, it explains Jesus' unbending demand. You've been following me, and you need to know that we don't have time for you to do this right now. Follow me regardless. Some believe, McGarvey and others believe, it could have been James and John's father Zebedee, since Salome is called the mother of Zebedee's children just a little later, rather than Zebedee's wife, indicating that he likely had died. That's a possibility. Second, while under ordinary circumstances it's proper to pay respects to the dead, at this time to do so would have put the disciple in direct conflict with Jesus' command to follow me. Therefore, our duties toward Jesus are superior to our duties even to parents when there is a conflict, and even the most solemn and tender duties of social life must give way to the command of Jesus. Having this incident a striking exhibition of the extremes which met in Jesus. Here is authority as exacting as that of an Eastern autocrat, combined with poverty as extreme as that of an Eastern beggar. Poverty is confessed without a blush, authority is asserted without an apology. In any other than the Son of God, these two extremes would not have met without the most ludicrous absurdity. I thought that was a pretty striking statement. We see even in the next parable, in the next event, when Jesus crosses the sea, after they begin going across a little bit, he falls a what? He falls asleep, which indicates what about his nature? His humanity, his tiredness. And then when they wake him up, carest thou not that we perish? And he says, what, you have little faith? What's wrong with you? And then he tells the winds, hush, hush, peace, and the winds, be still. And there's this great calm. And that obviously shows what about his nature? His what? His deity. So you've got both of those and you know, we haven't gotten to this point, but in John 12, where some Greeks come to Philip and they said, sir, we would see Jesus, who he is. That's what we're trying to do in our whole study. We're trying to see every little aspect, every little nook and cranny of Jesus' life that the inspired writers recorded, so we can really know who he is. In this part of your notes. But in Hebrews, the 4th chapter, we have not a high priest that cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but one that hath been in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. That's so chocked full of great truths. We have not a high priest. There's a double negative emphasizing the positive truth. We have not a high priest that cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, our weaknesses. So he feels our weaknesses. He knows us just as well as anybody can know anyone. And yet he did not ever succumb. He was tempted, but he never succumbed to any sin. And so in that he becomes like us. And yet he's deity at the same time. Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now in the bottom of the page here, on page 71, Matthew 8:23 through 28, and also these other passages which we've read, records Jesus calming the sea. After speaking with the two mentioned disciples, he entered into a boat to cross the northern part of the Sea of Galilee. What did he do as they sailed? As they sailed, he what? He fell asleep, right. Noting, the next page, noting that there was a great tempest and waves beat into the boat. And with all that occurring, Matthew records, but he was asleep. What does that indicate relative to his physical condition after his work of teaching and healing? He was extremely tired. You know, you just, if you're like I used to be, you don't picture Jesus ever getting tired because you don't see him as human. But, you know, in our study, we are trying to emphasize all aspects of his life. And he was human just like we are. He would tire like we. I remember in John, the 4th chapter, when he came to the woman at the well. Actually, he came to the well, and then the woman came. And he was weary. It says he is weary. In a book like John that emphasizes what throughout? His deity. That little spot there says he was wearied from his journey. And he's thirsty. Give me to drink. He's thirsty. He gets thirsty from walking in the heat, just like we do. And yet he knew her background. He knew her thoughts. He knew everything about her. So you've got meshed together his deity as well as humanity, his physical tiredness, and yet his ability to command the winds and the sea. All right. By the way, I think it interesting in the great tempest, the word tempest. What do your translations have for that? Is it a gale force or just a storm? I think some have a fierce storm. Great storm, yeah. Great storm. Tempest is from a Greek word seismos. Seismos. Seismic activity, what do we usually refer to when that happens? An earthquake. And that's the idea behind it. That's the word actually that's used. And so here you have a commotion, a great churning, a great commotion. So it was not just a little 15 mile per hour wind that was blowing. You know, the waves are what makes waves in bodies of water anyway? Wind. So the wind is beating down to the point that the waves are doing what? They're coming into the boat, filling the boat. And so they're saying, hey, we're going to sink. And you know, if you're out in a body of water like what we've been looking at, you're out there in the middle, and there get waves sloshing and all that. We think, well, I'd swim to the other side. Why couldn't you not? Well, the wind and the water sloshing over, you'll drown. It's going to drown. Some of you, let's see, Cooper was not old enough, and Kirsten wasn't. The rest of us probably were. Back in 1975, in November, you remember the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald? And Gordon Lightfoot had a song about it in the next year. That was one of those first things in my memory that I just was really shocked. How could this thing happen on a lake? It was Lake Superior, that the Edmund Fitzgerald. It was a over 700 feet long ship that carried iron ore and pellets and all that from up in Wisconsin to down to Detroit and all across. And it's a fascinating read if you're interested in that kind of stuff like I am. But I remember at the time, I was in my teenage years, I thought, how in the world how could it get stormy enough on the lake for that to happen? I didn't realize how big the Great Lakes were until I saw the tip end of the south end of Lake Michigan, and you couldn't see. I mean, you could barely see Chicago over, and you look straight due north, you don't see anything. This looks like the Gulf of Mexico. Looks like the Atlantic Ocean, and so you can imagine in the wreck of that ship, not really a tanker, but a cargo ship, almost 800 feet long. You think how long that is? Over 2 football fields long, and in a lake, and yet there's enough activity, waves coming up and wind blowing that it would sink a ship like that. And here's a little boat, probably no more than 25, 30 feet long, and it's out in the middle, and this gale force comes, and the waves are when the word seismos is used, it's huge, it's a big thing. And I think we want to flesh it out to get the feeling. This is not just a little rise and fall. This is a terrible storm has brewed, and they're scared to death. So here in Luke, the 8th chapter, there again in verse 23, there came down a storm of wind, the American Standard says, on the lake. And they were filling with water and were in jeopardy, and said, Master, Master, we perish. And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. Now, let's back up just for a minute. Don't have this in the notes. You see a storm, and whether you be on a lake or the river, when we were up in North Alabama, the Elk River ran into the Tennessee, and where it ran into the Tennessee, it was just a huge body of water. I mean, it was probably over a mile wide there in that area, and sometimes we'd get out in it, and the little boat, you're going to go up and down in it quite a bit, and when you get way on out, it doesn't take a whole lot of wind to. Well, that's what was happening here. Well, now let's say a storm comes, and then the storm lessens. Do you still have usually waves that are coming for a while? Yes. But on this occasion, Jesus rebuked the wind, and he said, peace, be still. And what happened to the water? It didn't just keep, rolling back and forth. What happened to the water? It's calm. It's completely calm. And so Jesus takes the force of the winds, he stops that. He takes the natural laws of what winds do to water, he puts brakes on that. No wonder, what was the reaction among these people? They marveled. They marveled. They were astounded. Who could this be that even the winds and the water, they obey him? We sing a song that, you know what song? Have you already been thinking about it? Yes. Master, what? The tempest is raging. Turn over that song real quickly. 689. 689. This is a great song. The first stanza is about the event itself that we've just read. The tempest is raging, the billows are tossing high. Skies overshadowed with blackness, no shelter or help is nigh. Carest thou not that we perish? How canst thou lie asleep? When each moment so madly is threatening a grave of the angry deep. The second puts a spiritual connotation to it. Master, with anguish of spirit I bow in my grief today. The depths of my sad heart are troubled. Awaken and save, I pray. Torrents of sin, anguish, sweep o'er my sinking soul. And I perish, dear Master. Oh, hasten and take control. So we put ourselves in the song as the apostles were to Jesus physically, but we put ourselves in it spiritually. And then the third stanza shows the calmness that Jesus wrought physically and what he can do for us spiritually. Master, the terror is over. Elements sweetly rest. Earth's sun in the calm lake is mirrored. Now it doesn't say that but it does say that the waters were still, and if it's still in the late afternoon and the storm is gone, you could maybe have a little literary license there. Earth's sun in the calm lake is mirrored. You can see the sun in the mirror of the lake, and heaven's within my breast. Linger, O blessed Redeemer, leave me alone no more, and with joy I shall make the blessed harbor and rest on the blissful shore. Let's sing the first three stanzas, omit the chorus until after the third. No, so me, oh, me, so. 689, Landon. Master, the tempest is raging, the billows are longing high. The sky is o'ershadowed with blackness, no shelter or help is nigh. Carest thou not that we perish? How canst thou lie asleep? When each moment so madly is threatening a grave in the angry deep. Master, with anguish of spirit, I bow in my grief to tame. The depths of my sad heart are troubled, awaken and save, I pray. Torrents of sin and of anguish sweep o'er my sinking soul. And I perish, dear Master, oh hasten and take control. Master, the terror is over, the elements sweetly rest. Our sun in the calm lake is mirrored, and heaven's within my breast. Linger, O blessed Redeemer, leave me alone no more. And with joy I shall make the blessed harbor, and rest on the blissful shore. The winds and the waves shall obey thy will. Peace, be still. Whether the wrath of the storm-tossed sea, or demons, or men, or whatever it be, no waters can swallow the ship where lies the Master of ocean and earth and skies. They all shall sweetly obey thy will. Peace, be still. Peace, be still. They all shall sweetly obey thy will. Peace, peace, be still. Hope we'll appreciate that song a little more next time we sing it. By the way, just put this in for my own 2 cents. To me, this is one of those songs that the writers were just geniuses. It's in a 6/8 timing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. What does that give you the feel? Almost you're rocking in the water, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1. It's that slow, back and forth, and then the build up in the chorus. It's just a beautiful song, beautiful sentiments, and wonderfully written music, in my estimate. All right. Yes, sir.
Well, I was just going to make a quick comment. Sometimes I've heard in the past where people claim that events such as these are just at face value. There's no other sentiment to it, but it obviously is.
Yes.
They downplay it like, this is just an event that happened, Christ did this. That's it.
Yeah.
With no sentiment to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that that's off-putting to me.
Yeah, I think so, and it misses the significance, Josh, of the whole event. I think, but this is tremendous. We've seen Jesus raise a person from the dead, heal various kinds of diseases, but we've not seen him do this. We've not seen him stop the winds and calm the sea. And so, you start putting it all together. Well, he has power over sickness, over life itself. He has power over death, and now he has power over nature. Is there an area that he doesn't have power over? And the answer is no. And we're going to see he even has, well, we've seen it before, casting out demons. in unclean spirits in others. Now he'll cast out demons, legion, we're many, and they'll go into about 2,000 swine and carry them up. He has power over the spirit world. And so no wonder we ought to honor him with all that's within us. David, you look like you want to say something. Okay, anybody else? Farron, you look like... Okay, we better stop. Time is gone. And Lord willing, we'll pick up with the... I think we answered most of our questions, but we'll pick up with the Gerasene demoniacs here in Lord willing Wednesday.